little bird. I thought it might be fun to do an old school YouTube in-depth makeup tutorial for this look, because quite a few of you on TikTok have been asking for that lately. So without further ado, let's roll, fellas. First, for a little bit of disability representation, I start every paint with a couple anti-inflammatories and some lidocaine roll-on for the back of my neck, baby. So I already cleaned my face with some Naturium cleansing gel, and I exfoliated with the Kiehl's. This is their powder formula that's kind of gritty. I love this. My skin is oily, acne prone. As you can see, we've got a little bit of breakouts happening. Nothing too crazy, just a little something going on. Most of the makeup artists that I really respect and admire are not big on using primers. It's more skincare focused, so that's what I've moved towards. I'm starting with a milky toning lotion. This one's from Good Light. As you can see, she's almost gone and we're gonna have to pick up a new brand. Don't know what that's gonna be yet. When I'm done with the skincare, I want the skin to feel juicy, hydrated, and I want her to look like she's a little bit wet when the skincare is done. My favorite sunscreen for skincare type stuff is this Abib Sunstick. I recently picked her up in the Airy Sunstick, which is a little bit pink. I love the way that this feels on my skin when I rub it in. A little bit of a serum. I'm using 2 pumps of the Peach and Lily Glass Skin Refining Serum. This is a serum I've had for so long. I have no idea how she hasn't run out yet, but she's still going strong. And my favorite moisturizer for my oily skin is this Neutrogena Hydro Boost. She hydrates very well and does not leave my skin feeling oily. All of the Hydro Boost products from Neutrogena I feel like are really great for my oily skin. So if you're struggling to find a moisturizer for oily skin that doesn't make you feel more oily, I would check out the Hydro Boost stuff. So far, every oily skin person I've recommended the Hydro Boost to has loved it, so I don't know, give her a shot. And working all those products down my neck and down my chest as well, because I do paint my neck and my chest just a little bit for some color cohesion, you know? And a little bit of an eye cream. This is the Vanilla Co. Dear Hydration Bounce Eye Cream. I love this formula. I have yet to find another eye cream that has this specific texture when I spread it out on the skin, and I really enjoy this one. And if I have any blemishes that are a little bit rough, have a little bit of a spiky texture to them, I'll take a little bit of this eye cream and dab it on there as well. Somebody on TikTok just asked me, how do I cover up texture from acne stuff? My recommendations, I'm not an esthetician, I'm not a skincare professional, but my recommendation, I love these little blemish patches, specifically from this brand. I've tried a bunch of blemish patches over the years. I recently switched to this one because it was cheaper, to be honest, but I like this one a lot better. They're very fast acting. I use them overnight usually, and then by the morning, the blemish is either flattened completely or the texture has become soft enough that I can apply makeup over it and not see the texture of the blemish. So after I've done that overnight, I'll add a little dot of my eye cream on top of that blemish to really get her juicy and plump and hydrated and not dry and spiky. You know what I mean? For skincare lip products, I have a medical condition that makes this bottom lip permanently dry, and the only chapstick or lip balm that I found that's been able to penetrate that is this Lipsil lip balm. I've tried expensive ones, I've tried lip masks. If there's a lip thing out there, I've tried it. And this little $5 to $8 chapstick lip balm, it so far is the only thing that's worked for me, and I will reapply this several times throughout my process. Love her so much. Let's talk about brows. I shave my brows off. I spent years doing the glue them down technique, so if you're gluing your brows down, this is when I would do that. The big mistakes I see with people trying to glue down brows for the first time, or you're trying to figure out how to do it well, first, clean those suckers with isopropyl alcohol. I used to do it on a little Q-tip. Scrub those brows so we can get out any skincare, any natural oils from your face, because if you try and glue down the brows on top of a juicy brow that has a lot of product in there, you're not gonna make it happen. We're using the Elmer's Glue Purple Disappearing Glue Sticks. The other ones don't work. You want the purple glue. And I also see a lot of people trying to glue down brows by taking the glue stick and going flat against the brow like this. That's not gonna get you where you want. You want to go from the outside corner of the brow, the tail of the brow, and work your way inwards, doing little circles of the glue stick, because we want to coat each individual brow hair from root to tip. And if you go this way, then you will be caking on a layer of glue on top of the brow and not getting to the root of the hairs. So we're gonna work from the outer tail in little circles like this with the glue stick towards the inside corner of the brow. Once you're confident all the brow hairs have been touched by glue from root to tip, we're gonna take a little spoolie and smooth it out and start to get her flat. Go watch a few tutorials on brow covering. I don't have the brows to demonstrate because I shave those puppies off. Every time I paint, I work with a clean, fresh towel on my lap. I use it for all kinds of stuff, cleaning brushes as I go, and other stuff I can't think of in this moment. Highly recommend a fresh, clean towel. I don't want to see a janky old towel that you've just gotten out of the shower with and it's wet. I don't want to see that. Fresh, clean towel, fresh out the dryer, or whatever you're using to dry your towels. I don't know your life. I'm throwing on a little bit of lipstick. This is not important to the makeup process. I just don't like looking at the purple birthmark on my bottom lip when I'm filming. So this part is just for me. You don't gotta do this, okay? But if you're interested, this is Milani shade 29 Teddy Bear, B-A-R-E. To cover up some of these little blemish marks and birthmark spots, these little blue and purple marks, those are my birthmark, and I cover those up with the NARS Pot Concealer. It's the lightest shade, I think, Affogato. Love her on a little dense packing brush. This is P. Louise E9. And once my skincare has thoroughly integrated itself in my skin and it's not sitting on top, that's when we'll pop on a little bit of this NARS Pot Concealer over any place I've got a little blemish. I have a little sunspot right here. I'll do that on there as well. And I'm okay with this looking unblended for now because we're gonna go over it with a full coverage foundation. And after spot concealing, the very first thing I do is my brows. Now that is because my hands are a little bit shaky. I don't have the steadiest hand. I do a thin brow, so drawing on my brow correctly the first time is a little bit tricky, so I like to draw the brow on and then we're going to clean it up on the bottom of the brow with concealer and on the top of the brow with my foundation. Lately I've been using the Made by Mitchell Brow Sludge Box. I really like the formulas of these. They're nice and creamy, but they do dry down a little bit, and I'm going to use, this is P. Louise E4. It's a thin angled brush. And I'm taking the lightest shade of this brow sludge box, picking up a little bit of that on the brush, and then flattening it out on my hand so we don't have any clumps of product, and the product is evenly distributed across the width of the brush. Brow placement. It's kind of hard to see where my natural brow is because they're shaved off, obviously, but hopefully you can see a little bit. My natural brow starts right here, goes up here, and right there. I hope you can see that well enough. I use the start of my natural brow to indicate where the start of my painted brow is going to be. And then I use the top of my natural brow, which is right about here, and we're going to connect it. I do two little dashes, one at the front of my brow and one at the top of my natural arch. I do a step on one side and then immediately do it on the other side rather than doing one full brow and then trying to match another full brow on the other side. And then we're going to connect this line. We did a pretty good job drawing these on the first pass. There's not a lot to clean up today. On the top of the brow up here, I'm going to use my foundation color. On the bottom side, I'm going to use a lighter concealer color. My foundation is the Natural Radiant Longwear Foundation in the shade Oslo, which I believe is the lightest shade. If there's a shade, I'm the lightest, and usually that's still a little bit too dark for me. This is one of those makeup brushes that if I lost it tomorrow, I would immediately order another one. There are very few brushes I feel like that about, but this is the P. Louise 7071. She's wide if you look at her this way, but she gets so insanely thin. If you pinch the bristles like this, it gets so thin and so flat. I did one pump of my foundation on the back of my hand, and I'm gonna pick up just a little bit on the edge of this brush. I don't want to coat the entire brush because I want a lot of control over where this product goes. And then I'll do a couple sweeps on the back of my hand so we don't have a ton of product and it's evenly distributed on the top half of this brush. The trick about this part is getting the foundation as close as I possibly can to the edge of the brow without changing the shape of the brow. I would rather my first couple swipes be a little bit too far from the edge of the brow and have to go a little bit closer than to accidentally cover up too much of the top of my brow and have to try and redraw the shape. So we've got something that looks a little bit like that. And I'm gonna do the same exact thing on the other side. And then I'm gonna buff out this color a little bit in the edges with my foundation brush. This is the Makeup by Mario F4. This is another one of those brushes that I would immediately buy another one if I lost it. It has these little paw print shapes on either side. One is smaller and one is a little bit bigger. So I use the small end to buff out these edges. And if I go from underneath like this, I'm almost certainly going to accidentally buff some of the brow. I hold my brush up like this so that I can see very clearly where the edge of that brush is going. Because when you do it like this, you can't see on the brow where this brush is tapping. And I do the top in foundation rather than concealer, because if I do both sides in concealer, then we have like a glowing brow situation, and that's not what I want. Now I'm gonna cut the underside with that same P. Louise 7071, but with a light color of concealer. I use two concealer shades. This one is the Huda Beauty Whipped Cream shade. It's their lightest shade. And so far, this is the lightest concealer I've been able to find with a good formula. I have several white concealers, but the formulas are trash garbage. I'm so sorry. I wish this shade was a little bit less yellow. I wish we had one that was the same lightness but had pink to it, but so far I have not been able to find that. So I'm wiping off the foundation that I used on this P. Louise 7071 flat brush. I'm wiping that off and then picking up a little bit on the edge, just like we did with the foundation. And I want to flatten it out on my hand so we don't have any clumps of concealer. And I use a lighter shade on the underside so that we can highlight right under this brow bone. The shaping of the brow with foundation and concealer is as important as drawing the brow on, because one swipe a little bit too close to the brow can change your brow shape drastically. And I'll admit, there have been times in my life where I've spent an hour or more just painting on my brows. Now I've done it so many times I can do it in 5 or 10 minutes if I'm not filming. Once I've gotten the product on there and I've carved out the shape that I want it to be a little bit more opaque, right where the highlight of the brow bone is going to be. So I'll pick up a little bit more of our lightest concealer shade and stamp it in. And what I mean by that is placing the brush where I want it to be and then dragging it down, as opposed to try and swipe it, plant the brush and drag it down, plant the brush and drag it down. I don't want to push too hard because the bristles, if I push too hard, the bristles will spread out some. And if it spreads out towards the brow, then we're going to start changing the shape of the brow, and I don't want that. So we're gently pressing and dragging down. I'm trying to paint on a little bit of a facelift. So if you're trying to decide between bringing your tail of your brow more at an angle like this or more at an angle like this, if you're going for that lifted effect, go at a higher angle. And just like we buffed out the edges of the foundation at the top of the brow, I'm going to take a clean brush and buff out the edges of this concealer as well. And grab any spots that maybe we've got a little bit too much product built up, smooth her down, and buff her out. Now, I personally do my brows and then my eyes and then my base. And I do that because sometimes when you're packing on a ton of eyeshadow, the powder from the eyeshadow will sometimes fall down on these parts of the face, and that's called fallout. I don't want those powder colored eyeshadows to fall down on the makeup that I've already painted down here. So I leave my face bare, do my eyes, so that if I have fallout, I can remove that from my skin before putting on foundation, concealer, all that. I don't have a super strong opinion about priming the eyelid to paint on, but I want some kind of cream product on there. So whether that be your concealer, which is what I'm going to use right now, or an eyeshadow primer, use what you've got, but we need some kind of cream on there so that the eyeshadow has something to grip to. If you're looking for a good eyeshadow primer, I love the P. Louise white eyeshadow base. I need to order more of it because I just ran out. And I also like doing my eyes before my base, because when I'm doing my eyes, I raise my eyebrows up a lot like this, and you can see all these crinkles in my forehead. And if I paint my forehead first, then doing all this crinkly stuff, we're gonna get creasing in the forehead if I've already done foundation and powder and concealer, all that on my forehead. And I'm a big fan of using larger brushes on your eyeshadow as well. So I'm using the small end of the Makeup by Mario. Made by Mario and Makeup by Mitchell. What a tongue twister, Beverly. And I'm buffing out that concealer that we just laid down. Trying really not to touch right under the brow, because we could get into dangerous territory where we're accidentally buffing the brow, and we don't want to do that. I just want to blend the creams out so that we have an even base. And then from here, we're going to do more creams. Lock in. So this is one of my favorite larger brushes to use on eyes. This is the Moda BMX265 Glow. I'm pretty sure she was supposed to be like a highlighter brush. I've never used used her for that. Never, not once. I'm gonna take a buildable but thin cream product. This is the Made by Mitchell cream case in the lightest shade. And I'm picking up some of this shade, which is a brown, but a little bit of gray to it. And I'm gonna start building the color on this outer corner of my eye. See, it's not a crazy difference, but we're building thin, gentle layers. You can barely see a difference, can't you? I know, but I know it's there. And don't be afraid to blend out cream stuff on the eyeshadows all the way to your temple, because we're gonna go back and do foundation and concealer later. And then I'll take a fluffy angled brush like this one. This is the Prados Beauty P22 brush. She's fluffy, but she's angled. Perfect shape for this inner corner. And I'm taking some of that same shade of the Made by Mitchell. I'm gonna start building a new crease. One of the most common comments on my makeup videos when I do them on TikTok is, I wish I could do that kind of makeup, but I have hooded eyes. First of all, my eyelid, this is my eyelid. This area is not my eyelid, but that is where I'm going to paint my eyeshadow. I'm not painting my eyeshadow on my lid. If I did, it would be this small. It would be the size of my eyeliner. So with all the love in my heart, I will say, having hooded eyes does not make it impossible for you to do a kind of makeup. You just have to use the space around your eye and create a new eyelid, which is what we're gonna do by contouring in here, and we're also gonna add a brightening concealer and carve a new eyelid shape. This, what I'm painting right now, is not my eyelid. And I'll also pick up some of a darker cream color and add that in here as well. Not only am I contouring the inner part of my eye, I'm also contouring the top of my nose. We want it to look like a little pinch at the top of the nose. And I'm applying this cream all the way from down here and almost meeting it at the brow, but leaving a tiny, tiny bit of white space where we applied our concealer. Do you see that thin white line right here? And then I'll buff out the edges of this. I'm not gonna really buff out this inner part, but I want the beginning and the end of this shape to be blended out. For whatever reason, it has historically been quite difficult to find gray eyeshadows. I've been recently using this Ellis Atlantis. This is from her new collection with Blend Bunny. It just came out. This is the Volume 2 palette, which are all the cool tone shades, a lot of grays in here with our row of pinks and reds. I'm taking that big Moda brush that we talked about earlier, and I'm picking up a shade that's almost like a contour shade. So I'm picking up some of this on my big fluffy brush, and I'm gonna tap off the excess. And see how we have a little creasing right there? We're not gonna paint anything on top of creams that are creasing, but I'm painting out here. We're gonna fix this crease in a minute. So I'm taking that big fluffy brush, and I'm gonna start gently patting in some of this grayish brown color. And I like to do little circles with this big brush. We're building gentle shadow shapes. Same thing on the other side. And I'm bringing it almost all the way up to the tail of the brow. I want more of a vertical shape this way rather than a horizontal shadow shape this way, because we're trying to paint on a lift. And I can even blend it all the way up here if I have to. I would rather the layer be too thin and too light and have to go in and add more than it be too much and have to try and remove it. I'm taking this next darkest shade and I'm gonna do the same exact thing that I just did. Big fluffy Moda brush, tap off the excess, gentle circles. And the darker the color, the smaller the shape I'm making. So that first shape, we went all the way like out here. This shape I'm keeping right here, concentrated toward the outer corner of the eye. And because I'm painting powders on top of creams, sometimes this brush or the other brushes I'm using will get a little bit of cream buildup in the brush itself. So between layers, I'm wiping this brush in little circular motions on my towel to remove the cream product. Because when the creams start sticking together, they stick your bristles together, and that's when you get a clumpy brush. That's when you get streakiness. Same thing on the other side. I really don't want to see the edges of these colors at all. I want it to be completely blended into the rest of the cream. So sometimes when I pack in that color, do you see how there's a little bit of a line right here? It's very gentle, very small, but I don't want to see it. So I'll take my big foundation brush, the smaller end, and gently tap the edge of that. That's beautiful. And I'm gonna do a couple layers of that second shade of brown that we were using, and do that same exact thing several times, each time making a little bit of a smaller circle and then blending out the edges if I need to. You gotta get into using bigger brushes for eyeshadow. For that really crazy smooth gradient, you gotta try it. I'm not swiping the product. I'm gently pushing it into the skin. Very gently. Push, 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 push in little circles like that. We're blending out the edges of each layer entirely before going to add a new layer of color. Because if you have one layer that has a little bit of a line or a place that's unblended and then you add another color or another layer of the same color on top of it, it becomes exponentially harder to blend the layer underneath. So we're blending out one layer entirely, then adding more product, gradually building up. I'm taking this is the Morphe M453. I love this little eyeshadow brush. And I'm gonna take the next deepest color, not the jet black, but this really dark gray color. And I'm picking up a little bit of her on the tip of this, dusting off the excess, and we're gonna start gentle circles, pushing it into the skin just like we did before. The brush is just smaller. Then I'll go back to my bigger fluffy Moda brush to blend out the edges of this, and I will just tap directly on top of this color in a little circle without adding any more product, just blending out the product we already added. Once I'm here, I've got a little bit of an eye shape, but I haven't gone in with any black yet. I want to set the area right at the highlight of the brow bone with a bright white. And I do this before I add the black because we don't want any of this color accidentally migrating up here. I'm taking some of this white from the Ellis palette. I've also done this with the One Size Stage White powder, or even a white loose setting powder works, but I prefer a dense opaque white eyeshadow. And I'm gonna gently tap right under the brow bone. And I would rather this white area be too large and have to bring our shadows up than our shadows go up too far and try and have to white this out afterwards. You're not going to be able to do it easily. And once I've used the majority of the product on my brush under the brow bone, I'll take whatever's left on the brush and gently tap the underside of the beginning of the brow. And now I'm going to start going in and building up the color in this inner corner. And the same concept for this inner corner that we used out here, slowly building up gentle layers. I'm taking this Morphe M453 little blending eyeshadow brush into that lightest color that we were using before. And I'm going to start dusting her in little circles in this inner corner. And I'm okay if the color comes too far this way a little bit because we're gonna go in and clean it up in a minute. Same thing, grab the next darkest color, and I want to concentrate the darker colors closer to down here, getting lighter the further up we go. Once I have a nice wash of some darker shades in this inner corner, I'm gonna take a smaller packing brush. This is the P. Louise E6, and go into this darkest gray that's not quite black but is pretty close, placing it here and then flicking it up. And then buffing that out with our blending brush. Very gently, kind of tapping, a little bit of circular motions, but very small. The biggest misstep I see when trying to do a cut crease is not having a dark enough contrast in this inner corner. Like I'll see folks use a light brown color or several shades of light brown, and then when you cut the crease and you add a light cream next to it, it doesn't pop as much as you want it to because you don't have it dark enough in this inner corner to start with. Once I have it as deep as I want, I'm taking my P. Louise 7071, that very flat guy, and some micellar water, and I'm gonna micellar water this brush up just a little bit. I don't want her dripping, and I'm even gonna pat her off on the towel just a tiny bit so she's not dripping. And I'm gonna start gently removing product in the shape of the cut crease that we want. I'm swiping a little bit of the product away and then brushing my brush off on my towel so that we're not just moving product around. If I were to just swipe, 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 we're gonna eventually get a collection of dark shades right up here because we're brushing the shades upwards but not removing it from my brush. If you want to see people who are really great at cut creases, go watch P. Louise. Go watch some of their videos. Now what I'm not doing is creating a cut crease that goes vertically this way. I saw somebody recently create one of my looks, which was very cute and I love to see it, but their cut crease shape was more horizontal. Mine goes quite vertical and then out, as opposed to going up a little bit and then going out like this. We want vertical, we want height, because I'm trying to elongate my face this way and make her skinnier this way. And a very important aspect to me of the cut crease is the angle that we end right here. I don't want it to stop at the natural corner of my eye. I'm creating a different eye shape and I want this to connect with where I'm gonna contour my nose. So I want it at an angle like that, so that we have some space between the natural corner of my eye and the shadow. Once I've got my cut crease in the shape that I want, then I'm gonna go in and add concealer in the cut crease. So I'm taking that Huda Beauty on the back of my hand, making sure we don't have any micellar water left on our brush, because that's gonna screw you up, buddy. Picking up some on the edge of our brush, like we did when we were carving our brows, and I'm gonna stamp the shape. Placing it down, picking the brush up, moving the brush up a little bit, and stamping again. I don't want this line right here to sort of feel like it's coming down like that. I want it to feel lifted. So we're gonna go up. There. And then I'll take my brush and start gently pulling. So stamping where we stamped and then pulling it this way. So we can move the product closer to my natural eyelid. Stamp and pull. I'm not sweeping like this because I want way more control of my brush. And I'll add a tiny bit more product if I need to, but generally, dropped my brush. But generally, I'll have enough product on there from stamping it that I won't need to add much more product. And also, if you do the sweeping technique, like place it here and then sweep it, you are inevitably going to start moving around these darker shades, and that really clean cut crease is going to start to get muddy with those darker colors. I'm going to raise my eyebrows and close my eyes as much as possible so we can move that product onto my actual eyelid. So we've just drawn on this fake eyelid right there and blend it out all the way so that we don't see any harsh lines, and we really can't see very well where this product starts and where the shadows end. Before I do anything else, I'm gonna set this cream concealer with a bright white. You know, I'm gonna use that same white color that we set under the brow with. Oh, I just realized we've got a white line right here. Can you see that little concealer? I'm gonna take a little bit of a bigger brush so that I can stamp that white color on and not have to go back and add layers of the white color. This is the Prados Beauty P23. It's very similar in shape to the P. Louise 7071. They're both a little bit flat looking, but this one is way fluffier. And anytime I'm working with a white or a bright color like that, I wanna make sure my brush is quite clean, so we're not accidentally using a brush that has a little bit of brown or whatever. First, make sure we don't have any creasing, because we don't want to set a powder on top of a crease, because that's just setting your crease in place. And I'm tapping on the white. That's beautiful. Yeah. And now we get to go in with our black. This is that Morphe M453. And I'm gonna pick up some of this jet black that's in here and gently buff that in. I would rather this shape be too small and have to make it bigger than it be too big and have to try and make it smaller. Gently tapping in a little circle in the corner of my eye. And again, I'm not looking for this black to go out horizontally. I want to create a vertical shape, and trying as much as we can to match it evenly on each side. That's why I do a little bit on one side, then a little bit on the next side, and flip back and forth between the two eyes. Now, as you can see, there's a pretty stark contrast from where our white of the cut crease ends and our shadows begin. So we want to blend that out. So what I'm gonna do is take our same fluffy brush, clean her off so she doesn't have any black on there, and then we're gonna take a thinner powder product, like a bronzer or a contour powder. So I'm using the Mitchell Curve Case Pressed in this really light brown shade. Pick some of her up on my eyeshadow brush, tap off the excess, and I want my brush to stay almost perfectly between the white of the cut crease and the shadow. So like this is too far into the shadow, this is too far into the white, and I'm gonna tap this line where the two meet. Slowly, after building up layers, we'll start to see this line disappear a little bit. You see how the blend is getting a little bit smoother as opposed to this stark white line? That's what I want. Now I'm gonna pause on the eyes and come back to them in a minute. We're gonna start doing a little bit of skin stuff. I've been using the Danessa Myricks Blurring Balm Powder, sort of like a primer. This is a product that you can use a bunch of different ways. This one doesn't have any color to it, so you can't see it on the skin. And this is what I use in place of a primer for my oily areas. The best way this has worked for me is to take 3 little fingers, rub it in a little bit, and then rub it into the skin. And I concentrate this product in the T-zone area. Oh, and if you have any fallout from your eyeshadow, remove that before moving on to any face stuff. If you have oily skin and your makeup melts throughout the day, this, for me, has been a game changer in that respect. She wants to sit on the skin for a little bit before you start adding products on top of her. Have you ever done your makeup and you do one foundation on all of your face, including your nose, but your nose ends up looking darker for some reason? I was noticing that a lot on me, and it was really ticking me off. So what I started doing recently is to paint my nose in my concealer shade. I'm not educated enough to know why the nose always seems to look darker even if you paint it the same exact color as your skin, but I see it on people all the time and it's become one of my pet peeves. I use two concealer shades. One is that Huda Beauty whipped cream, which we've been using all over, but the other one, which I haven't used yet, is the L'Oreal Infallible in the lightest shade. This formula, Maria, it's so fabulous. I wish I could get this in a lighter shade. And I'm just gonna paint my whole nose and then buff that out with the small end of my foundation brush. Now, if you start to see little black marks where it looks like eyeshadow is on your nose, that probably means there's eyeshadow on your nose. Either you had fallout or it migrated, which is why we want to be very diligent about removing any of that before we start painting our base. Pressing it into the skin. We are full on into base routine stuff now. I'm taking my foundation. This is the NARS Radiant Long Wear in Oslo that we used on the forehead a little bit already. I'm using 2 pumps on her on the back of my hand. And I'm going to use the large end of my foundation brush, scrubbing her out on my towel before applying any product just to make sure none of the bristles are sticking together. And I'm going to tap in a circle around this so we can get a more even distribution of the product. And then we're going to tap in a circle on our face. And whatever is left on my brush after applying a section, I'm going to gently brush over my ears because my ears get quite red. This foundation is one of those products that really changed my base routine game. Before, I had been using foundations that dry down, and I'm sitting here painting for a while and layering creams and all this kind of nonsense that we're doing. A product that dries down is not fun to layer creams on top of. It's going to start peeling up, it's going to start getting cakey, and between every application, once my brush has run out of product, I'm scrubbing it in circles in my towel to make sure none of the bristles are sticking together. Remember when everybody was painting giant triangles of concealer under our eye? I mean, we're gonna kind of do that in a minute, but I don't want to talk about it yet. That's the area I'm avoiding with my foundation. Under eye creasing is the bane of my existence, and I know I'm gonna use 2 concealer shades under my eyes at least. So if I have my foundation and concealers and then powders under my under eye, I know she's gonna crease. So I don't foundation this triangle under the eye area. Let me finish applying all the foundation and then we'll come back. And because I'm so neurotic about under eye creasing, I leave my concealer shades for last. So I'm gonna do my contouring and stuff before I add my concealer under my eye. Because if that concealer keeps sitting here and I'm moving my face all around to do my contour stuff, then we're gonna get creasing that we have to blend out. So I'm gonna start contouring this cheek to the forehead, and we're gonna connect this like a little C shape. I'm using the Made by Mitchell cream curve case in the lightest shade, and I'm gonna start with that cream that we used earlier for the inner corner. And I'm using this little paw print shape brush. This is the P. Louise F4. And I like her because she's the perfect size and shape for right here. And I use this shade because she's pretty cool toned, and contouring is essentially creating shadows or emphasizing shadows where they naturally are. I used a gray shade for contouring on TikTok the other day, and a couple people were confused. I'm gonna start with my grayish brown shade and press her here and bring it up. I want the concentration of the color to be right here for now. And then we're gonna blend out, see this harsh line we created right there? I'm gonna blend that out without adding any more product to the brush. And whatever I do right here, I also do up here, adding a little bit more product. There are so many contouring techniques and methodologies and shapes out there that people use, and it's really specific to your face shape, but also the face shape that you're trying to create. My face is on the rounder side. Naturally, she serves a little bit more cutie patootie, and I'm trying to create sharp angles where there are no sharp angles. I want to elongate my face and have less of the round happening. We have some light shadow happening right here, but I want to build up the pigment a little bit more. So I'm taking that same palette, dipping into this darkest shade. I was going to tap her off. It's a cream, Beverly. Creams don't tap. And I'm not gonna lay the whole brush down flat like that. I'm gonna press the tip of the brush in the place I'm trying to create the shadows and kind of flick it upwards gently. Slowly building a line of shadow from about here to right here where my dimple hits if I do that. And I'm okay if this shadow comes down too far because we're gonna clean it up in a minute. Now we have a collection of cream products that's happening right here. I'm gonna take the large end of my foundation brush and so gently tap, like so gently. Now this shadow is serving a little bit brown and I want to add more gray tones to it. This is the Kryolan TV Paint Stick in 074. I'll swatch it for you because it's so hard to find swatches of Kryolan paint sticks. She is gray. I want to create a shadow right here, and I want to emphasize the shadow on the underside of this cheekbone. So I'm going to take a little bit of her, this is a really interesting brush. It's a concealer brush from Morphe, the M132 concealer brush, and gently pat a little bit of her product on there. And draw a line from where I want the bottom of my contour to start to where it ends and blends out into my hairline. Now we have a harsh gray line on our face. Don't panic. I'm taking the same brush that I applied those Made by Mitchell creams without any new product on it, and gently tap. The Kryolan paint stick is a dense formula. It takes a little bit more effort to move around, but do you see how we have this sharper line of shadow coming down right here? That's what I'm looking for. These colors that we've added have come a little bit too far down than what I like. So I'm gonna take the tiniest amount of foundation on the back of my hand and the small end of my foundation brush and create a false highlight right here. Very blended out, nothing harsh. And if this line, this delineation between the contour and our fake highlight, if that line is too sharp, then we can always take our other brush we were using and gently tap without adding any more product. And now that my cream contours are almost exactly where I want them, now we'll start adding highlights. And just like I avoided adding product right under the under eye, I also avoided product right in this area because my forehead can tend to get a little creasy and I know we're going to build up some highlight there. So I'm taking that same Morphe concealer brush from a minute ago, cleaned her off, and I'm going to pick up some of the TV white from Kryolan. I'm going to start tapping her in between the eyebrows. And I'm going to do the same thing under my under eye to start slowly building up the brightness here. Just gently tapping, just gently tapping. You know what I forgot to do? Hold on. I usually do this earlier, but I forgot. I want this to have a sharp line going up this way, sort of like an eyeliner shape would be. So I'm taking my little makeup wipe, very gently removing some of that eyeshadow in the shape that I want. And then I'm taking the darker of my two concealer shades, the L'Oreal Infallible, and we don't have a ton of product right here. So I like to add a little bit. I place this here to connect the foundation and the contour colors with our under eye highlight. And then I'll take my lightest concealer shade, the Huda Beauty Whipped Cream, and go in here. And then we're gonna blend. If you have yet to try blending out creams with a velvet puff, you should try it. You should try it. The texture of that velvet, I don't know what it does. It is some sorcery. I'll also use a velvet puff to apply our powders in a minute, but we are not using the same puff for both. If you try and blend out your creams with a puff that has a little bit of powder on it or a lot of powder on it, it's nightmare central. You're gonna get some weird texture stuff. This velvet puff is starting to fray. She needs to be replaced, which is why I have a little speck of velvet right there and right there. So we're gonna remove those. And I'm bringing that concealer all the way up to where we cut that line on the outer edge of our eyeshadow a minute ago to create more lift. And whatever I do to my under eye, I'm doing to the center of my forehead, sort of between the eyebrow area as well. And as soon as I have these creases blended out is when I'm going to add my powder before they have a chance to sit there and crease more. And I'm using concealer to start contouring my nose. My nose specifically has really sharp bones right here in the middle. So if I try and contour along the sides of that, it ends up emphasizing those sharp bones and has the opposite effect. So instead I take my concealer and I bring it down from the corner of my eye to the top of my nostril. I'm gonna set this bright under eye with the Huda Beauty Sugar Cookie, which is a white translucent setting powder. Oh gosh, you're gonna get powder all over you. Picking some up on my velvet puff. I hope you didn't get too much powder on you, sorry about that. Picked some up on the tip of my velvet puff. Now what I'm not gonna do is take the velvet puff directly from picking up the powder and put it on my face like this. Do you see how we have powder collected right here and right here and right here? We've got like clumps of powder almost. If I apply that directly to my cream, those patches of collected powder are going to stick directly to my face. So what I do is I take the powder on here and press it out into my hand, evenly distribute that powder so we have a nice smooth blend on there. And the same way that I cut the edge of my nose with that concealer, I'm doing the same thing with this white powder. Press, 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 press. And I'll do that same exact situation with the white powder velvet puff right here between the eyebrows. And now I'm gonna set the rest of my face with a translucent powder. Now they will tell you out there that translucent powders, you can't see them, they're translucent. I have very strong feelings about that. And those feelings are, it is a lie. They're meant to be translucent, but most of them have color to them. And if you're a member of the translucently pale community like I am, some of those translucent powders will turn us orange. Presidential orange, Maria. Don't get me started. And some of my favorite translucent powder formulas don't come in a shade that's light enough for me. Like the One Size Beauty translucent powder, the formula is incredible. If there's a shade that works for you, love it. Use it, please. The lightest shade of their translucent powder turns me orange. So I finally found this one. It's Makeup by Mario, but I've been using this same tin for months now, so evidently it lasts me a while. But I love the shade of this. It's very light, but it has some pink to it as well, which I'm a fan of, as Big Pale. Just like we cut this cheek here with the foundation to make it brighter underneath the contour, I'm gonna do the same thing with my translucent powder. Pick up a little bit of that on the wide end of my triangle powder puff, press her out on my hand like we discussed, taking that powder and cutting the same place that we did with the foundation earlier, all the way from the bottom of my contour to the top of my ear. I've had a couple people say to me that pressing it out on your hand is gonna waste a ton of powder. That has not been my experience, because I think some folks assume pressing out the powder means... That was way too loud, I'm so sorry. That's when you get wasted product. I'm pressing very gently, and then I'll set my forehead. My skin, as we've discussed, is quite pale, but it has a lot of red and pink in it. So sometimes after we do all of this nonsense, it ends up feeling a little bit too yellow. So I like sneaking in some pink where I can. So I take some of the Huda Beauty Cherry Blossom, which is a pink setting powder, and pick up some of her on here and do her where I'm gonna do my blush, but also a little bit of overlap, and I use that to set my contour bronzer shades, and I'll bring her up my forehead as well. And then finally I'll take that same Mario powder and set my nose. Now once I feel like my whole face has been thoroughly set with powder, I'm going to do a weird thing. I'm gonna take my hands and gently tap my whole face to see if there are any points that feel like there's cream exposed. I can't tell you how many times I felt like I've set my entire face, but then realized I missed a tiny patch right here for whatever reason. While that's setting, I'm going to take a large fluffy brush. This is an AOA Studio brush. I've had this for 10 years. I've had this forever because it's giant. I'm gonna brush off any powder that might have migrated to my neck and chest area. And I'm gonna do a very light layer of coverage from here to like here. I've been using this Ilia complexion stick in 1N and then just buff it out. So far, of all the products I've tried for this step, that Ilia stick has been my favorite. A very light layer of coverage. And now that the powders have been sitting on my face for a minute, I'm gonna take this big ol' fluffy guy and very gently start dusting off any excess powder. And if you'll notice, that setting powder kind of muted down all these shades of contour and stuff that we did over here. So we're gonna go back in with powder contours and bronzers and reinforce those colors. This is the brush Prados Beauty P31. Powder contour. If you're a bronzer person, some powder bronzer. But let's skip to blush, shall we? I'm using several blushes. This is Patrick Ta She's Passionate powder blush on a big fluffy brush. I'm placing my brush in the contour place and then flicking it up. And whatever we do down here, we do up here. That Patrick Ta is more of a peachy shade. I also want to add some pink shades. So this is that Ellis Atlantis palette. It's the Lunar Eclipse blush palette. These two blush palettes, there's this one and an orange one. The formulas are so fabulous. In my opinion, they have a smoothing blurring effect. And because I want to elongate my face, I'm not going to put blush on the apples of my cheeks. I keep the blush in the same kind of placement as contour and bronzer would be. If I put it right here, we're going to get a rounder feel. And then finally we'll take this really light pink, and this is one of my favorite brushes to use for blush. It's the P. Louise F6. She's fluffy, but she's angled. Pick up some of that pink and gently brush her towards the center of my face. We'll do a little bit of contouring the nose with some powder bronzers and contours. So I'm taking on a very small brush. This is that M514 Morphe brush. I want to shorten my nose a little bit. Let's skip to lips and makeup wipe. and I'm gonna carve out my lip shape with a makeup wipe. I did the lips off camera. We used the Matte MAC Bullet Lipstick in the shade Acting Natural for that light color. Let's finish these eyes. We're in the home stretch, Beverly. By the way, if you need a place to organize all your makeup pencils, I got one of these for like 10 bucks. It's one of those pencil cases, and I keep every makeup pencil I have in one of these. First, we're gonna line the waterline with a black pencil. We're gonna do some shadow on the bottom as well. So I'm taking this little small brush. It's that P. Louise E9 that we've used several times already. And I'm taking that dark gray shade, and I'm gonna connect the top to the bottom. And then I'm gonna take some of this black and do it on the outer corner. I wanna smoke this out a little bit so it's not so harsh. So I'm gonna take some of my powder bronzer that I've been using on a little fluffy brush and gently buff out the edge of that black. You can also do this with a translucent powder if you want. You can do it with a light colored eyeshadow. Let's throw a little liquid liner on here. This is a felt tip pen from NYX, the Epic Ink Liner. I'm gonna kind of follow the line where I did this shadow. With all this black shadow that's happening, you really won't be able to see my natural lashes, but I do like to paint them black because sometimes they get white powder or translucent powder on them, so I just want to do mascara to paint them black, you know? We're gonna do 2 lashes, one on the top and one on the bottom. The bottom are these Ellis Atlantis, I think they're called Starburst oh, it says on the back, Starburst Lash Clusters. Baby, they're fabulous. I used the whole first pack that she sent me, and then I reordered them a few weeks ago. Ordered 3 packs of them. I use little tweezers to put mine on, hold them with the tweezer, throw some glue on there. I'm gonna do one on the outside corner of my bottom lash. I'm not gluing them in my waterline. I'm gluing them like underneath my natural bottom lash. One in the middle, one on the inside, and on the top, we're gonna put these Eldora B802 lashes that I've been talking about nonstop since I got them. Breaking out a brand new pack just for you. I'm not gonna put glue on yet because I wanna show you something. If I glue the edge of this, the outside corner, to my natural lash, it's gonna droop down like this. That's not what I want. Do you feel a draft? It took me years of looking for lashes to finally find these. I love how you can see them out in this area. Let me throw on some hair and we'll finish this girl up. Well, wasn't that just a lovely time? Please let me know if there are any remaining questions, or if there's other things you would like me to cover in this type of format. If you try this look and post it somewhere, please tag me. I would love to see it. It makes my day every time. Thank you so much for joining me, little bird, and I'll see you next week. Godspeed, darling.